When we think of anatomy and medical progress, we often imagine sterile labs and textbooks. But what if I told you that some of the most significant advances were built on stolen bodies, and not just any bodies, but human lives? Buckle up, because we're about to uncover the grisly truth about Burke and Hare. Imagine this, it's the early 19th century, the dead of night. Shadows flicker through a foggy graveyard, lanterns illuminating freshly dug earth. And in the stillness, figures crouch over graves, lifting bodies from their resting places. Who were these people? They were known as resurrection men, and their gruesome trade, grave robbing. Medical schools were spreading quickly throughout Europe and North America in the 18th and 19th centuries. The need for new cadavers to practice dissection and study anatomy increased as medical professionals attempted to better understand the human body. The issue, though, is that society established rigid regulations regarding what should happen to a body after death. Death rituals were solemn and elaborate. After passing, the deceased was carefully washed, dressed, and laid out at home, with mirrors covered and clocks stopped to mark the time of death. Family members, clad in black, mourned intensely, often for extended periods. A horse-drawn hearse would transport the coffin to the cemetery for burial, where ornate gravestones memorialized the dead, reflecting society's reverence for the transition to the afterlife. Only a small number of criminals' bodies were legally available for dissection. The vast majority were buried. Due to the ever-increasing demand, medical schools were forced to operate on the illegal market, which gave rise to an underground network of grave thieves. For a fee, these individuals would unearth bodies in the middle of the night and transport them to medical schools. The practice of grave robbing was dangerous and meticulously planned. Resurrection men typically worked in teams, using lookout systems and quiet digging techniques to avoid detection. They would only dig at the head of the grave, then break into the coffin and pull the body out with hooks or straps, leaving the soil mostly undisturbed to cover their tracks. Some of their tools were custom-made, like crowbars to pry open caskets or wooden boards to avoid footprints on the soil. Grave robbers worked quickly, aiming to complete a job in under an hour. It makes sense that the public was appalled at the thought of their loved ones' graves being disturbed. This led to a backlash, sparking various measures to prevent grave robbing. Some families bought iron coffins, others hired guards, and still others placed heavy mortar-safe cages over graves to prevent robbing. One of the more inventive of these weapons was the coffin torpedo, a spring-loaded rifle inside a coffin that would explode if disturbed. Mortar-safes were iron cages often placed over graves to prevent the resurrection men from executing their business. The case of Burke and Hare, two notorious resurrection men in Edinburgh, is among the most well-known. By determining that it was simpler to make bodies available than to dig them up, these individuals elevated grave robbery to a new level. Their horrific, murderous rampage exposed the shadowy side of the industry, ultimately sparking widespread public outrage and changes in law. Burke and Hare ran a boarding house where, by grim coincidence, one of their tenants died owing rent. Hare and Burke sold the corpse to Dr. Knox, a local anatomist, for the then amount of £7.10. Dr. Robert Knox, the anatomist whose cadaver purchases kept William Burke and William Hare in the murder business, remains largely kept a secret and an enigma. Born in Edinburgh, Scotland, he served in the army and studied in Paris before coming home to open a private anatomical school. His supporters said he was not aware of the murders. However, opponents claimed he simply turned a blind eye and was in denial. This was a lucrative body-selling activity, so the body snatching and selling continued. Now, they got a whiff of how much money they could make. Knox's staff advised them that they were very eager for more body transactions. After realizing the possible profit and large payment given to them for this transaction, Burke and Hare came up with a plan. They would make bodies to sell. They started luring those who were less fortunate, usually the sick, homeless, or destitute, back to their lodging house so they could suffocate them. Since there were no visible scars from this technique, the deaths appeared to be natural or accidental. Burke and Hare went on to kill at least 16 people over the course of the year that followed, including an elderly woman named Mary Doherty. One of the most tragic victims of the Burke and Hare murders was James Wilson, known locally as Daft Jamie. Despite his reputation as an eccentric, Jamie was not mad but had savant abilities, performing complex calculations in exchange for small tokens like food or drink. Known around Edinburgh's Surgeon Square area, Jamie was a familiar, harmless figure who never begged and was cared for by his family. His unique character made him a well-loved neighborhood personality, which made his murder especially despicable. Hare's wife, Margaret, who had none of Burke's pragmatic sense of executing a successful murder plan, chose Jamie as he was roaming around the grass market one cool October day, seeking for his mother. His unique stumbling walk, shoeless feet, and overall confusion marked him out as the perfect prey. Burke and Hare, as usual, persuaded Jamie to drink despite the fact that he was a teetotaler. Jamie, a sober man in his 20s, resisted the murderous pair's attempts to kill him. Daft Jamie could not be burked, but he was eventually murdered very violently. It was not until two boarding house visitors, Anne and James Gray, who were suspicious and concerned about Maggie Doherty's disappearance, entered the premises while Burke and Hare were out. After they discovered her dead underneath the bed, they alerted the police. During the trial that followed, Hare struck a deal with the prosecution, turn in Burke and receive an acquittal. He did this, then fled the country. Burke, meanwhile, was sentenced to death by hanging. Burke was hanged on January 28, 1829, and his body was publicly dissected at the medical school. Then his bones were defleshed and his skeleton put on display. Burke's death mask and Hare's are on display at the Anatomical Museum at the University of Edinburgh. The story of Burke and Hare sheds light on a time when medical progress came at a disturbingly high cost, through grave robbing and even murder. But it raises an intriguing question. In our pursuit of medical advancement today, could we be unknowingly crossing ethical lines that present and future generations will find shocking? What do you think? Are there modern practices that echo the dark desperation of the past? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective on how far we've really come. Thanks for watching and being part of this journey into history's mysteries. If you found this video interesting, subscribing is a great way to support the channel, and it ensures you'll catch more stories like this in the future. I've noticed a lot of viewers haven't subscribed yet, so if you're enjoying the content, go ahead and join our community. And of course, feel free to like, share, or drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.